I'm a big catastrophizer. When I found out about that word, I was like, oh, right. Okay, I get it.
So imagine it. You are a little jaded by the scene. You don't feel like you fit in. You don't feel like there are any nights that are for you, that speak to you, that are created with you in mind and play the music that you like and have the faces that you want to see within it. So what do? Well, if you are anything like this week's guest, you roll up your sleeves and you make your own damn night, thank you very much. And that is precisely what self-proclaimed future award-winning documentary filmmaker Ames Pennington did when they were still discovering themselves way back as a young queerdo in Manchester, England, where they felt that the gay scene there wasn't really for them, and so they got going with their own club night, DIsco Opposite Tesco. And this is where I come in to say a quick side note for anyone outside of the UK. Tesco is the name of a large supermarket chain in the UK, and so the DIsco Opposite Tesco is making fun of the fact that those things rhyme. I shouldn't explain this joke to you, I'm sorry. Tesco, large supermarket, that's all you need to know. We caught up to talk about DIsco Opposite Tesco, but along the way, there's this really great conversation about the power of leaping before you look and attacking the things that terrify you head on. And I think that I need to go into a bit more of that, even though the thought of it is terrifying, so terrifying. Now, before we get into this week's episode, there are two things that I want to say. The first is, I need to warn you that I sound really curmudgeon-y in this conversation. I keep kind of almost teetering on saying, in my day, during the conversation. So I don't know what was going on for me that day, but just want to make you aware that I'm aware. Second, for those of you in London who happen to be listening to this episode on the week that it's released, Ames's new film, Tops, is playing as part of the Queer Fringe Film Festival this Saturday, the 21st of September, at the Rio Cinema in Dalston. More details are in the show notes for this episode, but if you're free, why not come on down? I am going to be there and I would love to say hello. Although, do be aware that if you do say hello to me, I am going to be super awkward. Right, this is Lost Spaces, the show where we discuss the memories from lost queer spaces and how they helped shape us. Let's start by finding out about Ames's younger self's plans for world domination.
I mean, my plan for world domination was like how to be queer and not be here, really. Because where I was just, like, it was too much of a town that didn't want any difference or anything like that. And I just knew that I had to get out of there.
Is that world domination or is that survival?
Well, it felt like world domination at the time. When you look back now, it is definitely survival. But to me, I think now I look back, I'm like, wow, the bar was a little bit low for me. Actually, looking back, I was like, God.
Isn't that funny? I think I've had a similar experience. It's like the only ambition I have is to go somewhere where I can be totally gay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what does going and being queer somewhere else look like to 18-year-old you?
Well, a gay bar for the start of it, a gay bar near where you live, because I had to travel to Sheffield to go to my closest gay bar, and that was half an hour away. So it was like, to go down the road and be able to go to Canal Street. I had visions of Canal Street when I was 18, and then I got there and I was like, I don't like it.
And is that because it's so camp? I'm not saying camp is a bad thing.
I mean, I love camp, but it was just so cis, gay, and I didn't fit in, at that time. And I think it didn't feel very queer to me in a lot of ways.
Okay. So is this the difference between gay and queer? It feels very gay.
Well, maybe. Like, especially back then. Like, I'd got things of queer as folk and, me getting in everywhere. And I just felt like sometimes I'd be a bit trodden on at the bar and a bit, got
Ah.
very bitchy or, a bit forgotten. And there was little pockets of havens, but the whole street was like a bit overwhelming when you first got there, I'd say. But it's like anywhere, you have to find where you fit within it all, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and the fantasy is maybe the wrong word, but the fantasy that you have when you're a child of like, I am just going to go to the very first gay bar and I'm going to rock up and everyone's going to love me. And then the
Yeah.
crushing reality of being like, oh, these aren't my people. What?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you said you had to go and find your tribe. How did you do that?
I think it was just going to lots of different things, really. Lots of different nights out, meeting different people. And then I think because I was involved in like music and art, then that started to bleed in, and it started be rather than this big gay night out, I'd be following like my kind of passions of music and art, and I wanted to be going out to those types of nights, which often happen to have a lot of queer people in, or both together. So it was really driven by that in the end.
Can we go a step back
Uh-huh.
to the small town outside of Sheffield where you grew up?
Yeah.
When was your first inkling, or like, what do you remember of your first inklings that you might not be heterosexual, cis normative?
Oh God, I think it was. I remember feeling something strange around 4 or something like that. I just remember not kind of. I mean, everybody says this, but not fitting in. I remember it early on, and I was always really tomboy as a kid, and I was always wanting to play Robin Hood, and whenever it came to something like this, I was always like wanting to be the boy character, and I think I really started to maybe more realize when I was like 9 or 10, or like, but I didn't know the words for it,
Yeah, of course.
I
Yeah.
didn't know the words for these things. But it was like I was young. And then by I was 13, 14, I could see that I was like more into girls and stuff like that. But then it's also, I feel like I've continued to keep coming out as in life. I came out as queer when I was, a teenager, but then came out as trans non-binary when I was like a few years ago. So it's been a continuation. It's not just been one thing.
What do you think was harder?
Oh God. I think both, in a way, were as terrifying as each other, but just for different reasons. It was terrifying the first time because I'd not made my own life yet, because I think I was only 16 when I told my mum. And she responded to it well. I mean, I told her when I was really drunk as well, being on like a night out. And then, but it was okay. But obviously it was difficult. But she was really good about it, and that was so helpful. But then, certain members of my family weren't, and all that type of thing. And also, it was a different time back then. And I guess second time around coming out as trans non-binary, it was terrifying to myself, or I think more than anything. Kind of thinking as well that I'd gone that many years without kind of being this version of myself, which was felt like I'd wasted time, or not wasted time, but I think that was a bit of a realization.
Okay. And then in comparison to the joy, you've not described it as joy, so this is just me kind of imprinting my own understanding on this. So correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
How did that contrast with the joy of being like, oh, this is who I am? Or were you just focused on the like, oh, I wasted all this time?
No, there's been absolute moments of joy. It holds both things, like there's joy, and I guess it's a bit of both with all of these things, really, for me.
Yeah, but did you feel that way in coming out as queer? Well, I guess you were really young then.
Yeah, I was just so young that I was just trying to get by, whereas I think I think what was so joyous about coming out as trans and non-binary is the community that I've had around me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is joyous and special and unique, you know. So that's been really amazing. And that's a lot of joy from that.
But the 16-year-old you was like, I've just got to get out of here. I've just got to formulate a plan, and I've just got to be somewhere that's not here.
Yeah, definitely. They were out the door. They were out the door for sure.
What do you remember most about the first days in Manchester?
How big it was. I just couldn't believe it. I was just really like awestruck of like, I don't know how some people move to an actual really big city. I mean, Manchester is really big, but there's other big cities in the world. I was just like, just kept looking up all the time. I couldn't believe how far anything was. Couldn't believe that the shops were open so late, which I loved. And it was exciting and it was scary. All of those things, really, for me.
But eventually you found your way, you figured out Manchester, you settled in. But at what stage does this week's Lost Space, Disco Opposite Tesco, come into the picture?
2007, I think, around then, or 2006. I mean, this is very vain of me to say Disco Opposite Tesco as well, because it is a club night that we started, which is kind of funny that I'm like, oh, this is the one that I miss most. But I think I miss that time, or I like miss the thing of I'd probably never put on a club night now. I'd probably put something else on, but I love the fact that I did that. And it wasn't opposite Tesco, it was diagonal Tesco, if I'm to be specific.
Doesn't have the same ring though, does it?
It doesn't, does it?
Did you debate that? Or did you just go with the fact that it's opposite?
I think we just went with it, you know.
Whose idea was it?
I think me and my friend Sharp were really, we were like on about it. Maybe we were saying like there's not enough places to go and blah, blah, blah. And then one night we just decided, well, we'll put one on ourselves then. So it was both of us chatting at a bar one time. They'd probably say it was their idea and I'd probably say it was my idea. So I'm going to say that it was both of our ideas.
And what was the vision then? Like, every other club night is crap. We need to come up with something. It's going to have this, this, and this.
I think we were just like, oh, we just really want a bit more of like our type of music. So we were like into like the Tigra and Riot Girl stuff, and we wanted to be able to play that, and you just didn't hear that as much. And we wanted somewhere that was queer, you know, where you could come listen to that music and you could have a queer night out. That was the aim of it.
So you've like come up with this concept. You want to have this club night. You found your venue. You're planning the first night. Describe the feeling to me.
I was shitting myself. I was. The more and more I talk, the more and more I realise like how anxious I was as a younger person. And that's probably not got that much better, to be honest with you. But I remember being so scared about it all. Probably like Sharp, who was running it with me, was probably not as scared because they were in bands and all sorts at the time. But I just remember being like, what are we doing? Like this, what if nobody turns up? You know, what if it's shit? What if, you know, like all these things could go wrong. Also, it was the type of place, it was in Saki's in Rusholme. I don't even know if it's there anymore, but it was like, you'd kind of turn up and it'd be like, yeah, speakers aren't working, and you'd be like, oh my God, what are we going to do? I remember one time they were like, yeah, we haven't got any decks, and we had to, honest, this is not a lie either, we were DJing off of 2 DVD players.
But do we need to explain what a DVD player is to our listeners?
Oh, God, yeah, probably. For this intergenerational podcast, it's how older people used to watch films. So we were like playing them through these DVD players, which was absolutely madness when I think about it.
That doesn't make sense to me. So you would have 2 DVD players, you'd play one song, and then you'd queue up the second player.
Well, you couldn't really even cue it. You'd just have to press pause and then hit the other one. That's how manic it was.
So there'd be like a 5-second delay on the dance floor. Stop. Oh,
yeah, just a little like, Yeah, and a amuse-bouche. Do you know what I mean? A little cleanser before the next track.
Okay, so I want to find out more about this anxiety in putting on an event because I find it fascinating when people are terrified of things and do it anyway. And I don't know if it's a youth thing, a naivety thing, or if it's just something about creative people.
I do it all the time.
So when does the anxiety go away?
When it's over. The last film I made, I was like, what am I doing? I've never done this before. I seem to have this perverse thing where I just like to put myself in like really scary situations.
But there's an interesting thing there, isn't there? Because when you conceive of the thing, you're probably not terrified. Again, I'm putting words in your mouth when I'm saying all of this. But if it's anything like me, it's like, yeah, this is amazing. I'm going to do this. Let me like write down all this plan about what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it and da-da-da-da-da. And then as it gets closer and closer, I'm like, hang on, what the fuck am I thinking? Why would I want to do this? And then for some reason, because I've committed to it already, I'm like, no, I've just got to keep going. I've just got to keep going, even though I'm petrified.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're the same then, because that's how I kind of do. I'm like, this is fun. Or even if I can feel like, oh, this is out of your comfort zone. And then it starts coming up and you're like, shit. I've said I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing.
What's the moment? Like, if only we could catch ourselves just at that moment before it flips and like somehow took ourselves off the ledge. I don't know. Because it's without fail.
Yeah. It is good to see it through, though, isn't it? It's like, it does do something to the soul.
It does. But, like, you know when you're a kid and you're like, when I'm an adult, I'm going to have all my shit sorted out and everything's going to be, like, fine and easy and I'm going to know what I'm doing and what my purpose is. Why is it that even though you've put yourself in these situations again and again and again, you've not learned... And when I'm saying you, I'm like talking about the royal you. I'm not like, why have you not learned? Why have we not learned that like it'll all be okay? So why bother worrying?
Oh God, yeah. Well, maybe now you've said that, maybe when I go and do the next scary thing, I'll just have that in my mind. But you know, I'll be worrying again.
Yeah, you don't sound too convinced.
Yeah. No, you just forget that, I think, because I think there is a part of you where you can rationally think, no, it will be okay, because really, what's the worst going to happen? Nobody's going to turn up or blah, blah, blah. But I guess it's that kind of putting yourself there and winding yourself up about it in your head almost, isn't it?
Yeah, and even though all the things that you thought were going to go wrong the last time didn't go wrong, there's still the opportunity that they will go wrong this time.
Well, yeah, I mean...
And hundreds of new things.
Yeah, things that you couldn't have even dreamt of. I'm a big catastrophizer. When I found out about that word, I was like, oh, right, okay, I get it. What about you? Like, do you think that you've got better at it with age, with being able to, like, calm it down and that voice that's in your head?
No. Well, maybe it's
Yeah.
better. Like, maybe it's not as, like, terrifying and I'm not, like, shitting myself as much as I used to. But I'm still shitting myself. And I'd prefer not to shit myself, you know?
Yeah. But then at the same time, you're probably given, and I think this is the thing with me as well, I'm always challenging myself to new things because I do get bored. And maybe that's similar to what you do. Because if you're doing the same thing all the time, you're not going to be worrying about it. You're not going to be shitting yourself. You know, you get used to it. Whereas that's why I like to do different things, is that maybe I'm a bit addicted to it.
But there are people, I believe, I've been told, there are people who want to do new things and aren't scared about them. And that would be nice.
Yeah, but maybe they're crap at them.
Oh, wait, so you're saying that we're good at the things that we're scared of?
Yeah. I'm just joking.
No, I'll take that. That's fine.
Let's take it.
Yeah, and maybe there is something to be said about the value of the nerves in keeping you sharp and, like, focusing your attention, maybe? I don't know. Is there some value to it?
I think both ways work, don't they? Both ways work, and maybe I'm just never going to quite be that person that's going to be relaxed about something. Those nerves, I think, are part of me, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing because nerves are just excitement. That's what I've been taught, you know, push a button on your head, turn that fear into excitement. It is like an energy.
Who told you that?
A director, a performance artist. Yeah.
Oh, that
Uh-huh.
checks.
Yeah. It was when I had to get on stage for something scary and they were like, right, okay, I'm going to give you this technique. A classic technique.
Ooh.
But, you know,
And did that technique work?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm being Captain Cynical here.
there is something about it. Like, because I think my scares have got more and more scary. As in, I've done more and more scary things.
Yeah. You've pushed yourself further and further.
I've pushed myself further and further. So it did make it better. I still, you know, I managed to go and do it. So that was an important thing.
Yeah, people tell me to do the Wonder Woman poses. I just feel like a prat.
Ooh, I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's like when you want to feel powerful, you like pose like Wonder Woman. And I think more specifically, Linda Carter as Wonder Woman in the 70s TV show where she had an invisible plane. So you do like this with your hands on your hips and you're like, yeah, I'm like strong and bold and Amazonian. But yeah, that doesn't work for me either.
Well, you could try this button in your head.
I do have this lump in the back of my head. That could...
That's perfect then.
All right. Okay. That'll be next time.
Yeah.
Okay. So this first night, terrified, went ahead with it anyway. What do you remember from that night?
I think just really chuffed that people came. I do remember that maybe I put like my girlfriend at the time on the DJ decks and she was a bit like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, you'll figure it out. And that was it. And that, I mean, I look back now and I'm like, God, that's bad. But she did figure it out and she did really well. But I just remember being like, yeah, pretty chuffed that we'd managed to pull it off, you know, more than anything. And that people had come. I like went on the internet and seen if anybody had written anything about it all those years ago or whatever. And somebody said something like, let me find it. Shall I read it?
Yes, please.
It's only 5 lines, so don't worry. But somebody said, some of my favourite ever gay nights in Manchester. DIsco Opposite Tesco. Small, sometimes absolutely dead. Sometimes hammered. Trashy queer nights in Rusholme, downstairs in Saki Bar. Power ballads at 3 a.m. when there were about 2 people left. Steve McCabe got on an amp and showed his bum to the audience once for no reason. Always a great live queer act from across the UK every month. This one saw the return of Valerie, local queer heroes who hadn't played for years. They complained warmingly that all their friends were at a house party and should have been there instead. I love the fact that they were like, it could either be empty or hammered. And I was like, that was it. It was either or. You know?
And after that first night then, once you'd gotten over your nerves... You'd felt the fear and did it anyway, which I think is a terrible book from the 80s, maybe. What do you remember of the next day and the feelings of the next day?
Just the worst hangover probably you've ever felt in your life.
Okay, so I was expecting like feelings of accomplishment, planning for the future, but no, just a hangover.
There will have been a real hangover, but I will have been chuffed that I've done it. Definitely.
And did you and Sharp then be like, okay, now we're going to plan the next one? Or was it less planned out than that?
I think less planned out than that. I think I phoned them once one of the days after and I was like, just phoning about planning it. And they were like, what are you on about? Like, well, plan it later on. They're Sharp by name, sharp by nature, but in the best way. Maybe we had slightly different styles. But yeah, it was a planned but also ad hoc thing, if you know what I mean. It kind of works itself out along the way.
Okay. It's like put a date in the diary and everything will fall into place.
Get the band in and then we'll figure all the other bits out. And then we'll turn up there and they'll say, we've not got any decks, you're going to have to use DVD players. Or,
we've run out of beer.
Yeah, exactly. I remember the one time when it was really packed, though, was at Pride. And that was really good because it was the weekend of Pride and loads of people had come down to our thing, and that felt really good. And I remember me and Sharp like counting the money in the back and being like, we couldn't believe it that we'd made money, you know. I mean, it wasn't thousands, but it was enough for us because we were like not making much money. So it was like, you know, we couldn't believe it. That we'd made more than like 20 quid, you know.
We can pay the band and ourselves.
Exactly.
So what was going on in your life at this time?
I think it was the beginning of me getting to know Islington Mill, which was and is an arts music space in Salford, in Manchester. And they have like an alternative arts education group, or, you know, an alternative art school. And it was around the times that the tuition fees were starting to go up and things, so that they'd set up an art school. And I joined on with that early on. So I think I was probably working as a care worker at the time, and then in my time away working as an artist, and then I think started being in a band and stuff. So I was starting to get creative, I would say.
And in terms of your queerness at this point, were you just strident?
Yeah, I think like DIsco Opposite Tesco was great for me. I think meeting the like mill people was like great for me when I started to meet people there, because they had a club night called Club Brenda, and it was just a lot of queer people there. Then I came into my own. So DIsco Opposite Tesco was the start of it, but I was in a real relationship where I was in a bit of a rut, and it felt like an almost straight relationship, in some weird way.
Ooh, describe an almost straight relationship for me.
Oh, I don't know, just really, it didn't feel expansive, or I'm not saying that all straight relationships are like that. I know many people that have good ones. It's not your fault. But it just felt really monotonous, I guess. I was just not having a good time in it.
Yeah, okay.
And like maybe DIsco Opposite Tesco was the start to be the end. Like I started making this thing, and all my creative side started coming out maybe a bit more around that time.
Well, and she became a DJ as well, so...
Who did?
What? Your girlfriend at the time, but maybe it's not the person you're talking about.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I forgot it already.
She's an international DJ now, or because you
I
just
know.
threw her on the decks.
Oh my God, you know what? I'm going to Google her afterwards and find out. You're probably right.
And so, sorry, I cut you off. You were talking about having access to that crowd, that group of people, changed your way of thinking.
Yeah, I think that once you start meeting with more creative people, I think things just start to happen, you know? Like people start being in bands, people start putting on club nights. So all these things started happening. And it usually was fueled by kind of meeting people and new creativity, I guess.
And so the question that we'd started with here is like your sense of yourself within your queerness. Does your creativity sit hand in hand with your queerness?
Yeah, definitely. I think so.
How does it show up?
I think through, like, for instance, recently I've made this film called Tops, and that is like me going and playing a version of myself where I'm play a TV presenter, and I go and meet four other trans people, and I ask people, what is the top that you wanted to wear after top surgery? Because I had top surgery. And just like being able to do that and explore me going through top surgery, but in this really daft and creative way, like film that I've made is a lot of fun. You know, it's kind of taking a serious subject and having a laugh with it, really. And that's what I think has always happened with me in creativity and my sexuality or my gender. It's being at one, I guess, in a way. That sounds weird, but it is true.
Do you think that your creativity fuels your understanding of your gender and your sexuality, or that your understanding of your sexuality and your gender fuels your creativity? It might not make a difference, actually.
Oh, chicken and egg. Yeah, I think both are so entwined. For that specific thing, it was almost like slightly therapy for me, or like, discovering all these things about myself and then getting to be creative with it all, and understand it even more and meet other people and then share it with audiences is the full circle way of understanding it all, really, I guess.
Yeah. So I grew up at a time where the dominant message was, I'm gay, but I don't let it define me. And maybe that wasn't the dominant message. Maybe that was just the message I kept hearing from other people, that other people were saying like, oh yeah, but it's just a part of me. Just ignore it. It's not really that important. Don't think about it. I'm just a regular person. I'm normal.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious how important my queerness is to my identity and who I am. But I still have this kind of overriding message that I was programmed to have when I was younger that says, like, you shouldn't make this a focus of things. But then I'm making this podcast, so what the hell am I talking about?
Well, it's maybe always there in the background.
Yeah.
Or you can recognise what it was before. I do feel that way about, like, even when I said I was having that kind of straight relationship or that slightly boring relationship, I felt like within that I was like this part of myself almost, like, I think my hair was a lot longer and I was just playing along. I was more feminine maybe, and it felt like more like what the world would want you to be a little bit more like as somebody that is queer. You can't be butch or you can't be like that, or whatever. And I think I really like played into that a little bit. And then you shed it a bit. And I had a friend at the time who's a bit older than me that's in Manchester that used to say about himself that he was like playing the nice gay, for a long time.
The respectable gay.
Exactly. And when he said that, I was like, oh God, like I could really see what he means. And now he's like, I just think he's like a brilliant, inspiring person. But like he really is who he is now. Like he's really into the leather scene and stuff like that. And he's just out there and he's doing it all and he's realised what was trying to encapsulate him and once he said that to me, I was like, I think that's what I was doing for a time as well.
And it's really hard. So this is me overcomplicating things. So tell me to shut the fuck up if it's getting a bit too much. It's really hard though to know.
Shut the fuck up. No, just kidding.
No, I need to hear that more. But it's
No.
really hard to know who the real you is. Because, this example that you've given around this friend in Manchester, once he's gone into the leather scene, and I'm not saying this is what's happened, I don't know him. I don't know why I'm giving all these caveats. I don't know him. But once you go into the leather scene, the temptation is to conform to the leather scene, right? And so, like, embrace things that you wouldn't otherwise embrace. And maybe that's fine. And maybe, like, you don't feel any internal tension for doing that. You just go along with it. But would you have done it if it wasn't for that influence?
Do you mean that, like, once you start getting into a scene that is, like, so specific in lots of ways, that you just end up becoming so specific with the things that you like and don't like?
Yes. What can happen a lot of times with young queerlings is that they're like, oh, I'm going to go to Canal Street. I'm going to start going out clubbing. And then they start dressing in a certain way and talking in a certain way, getting their hair cut in a certain way, because that's going to help them fit in. But it's not really who they are.
But then I guess they get to where they are eventually.
Yeah.
Because that's how you find out, isn't it, usually? Just like I ended up playing femme gay gal back in the day straight almost for a little bit. Eventually you get to who you are. You kind of do it a bit and then, not everybody, but hopefully if you keep trying to stay true to yourself and your own feelings, hopefully you find where it fits with you, all of these things.
Yeah, and I think I'm probably thinking about this as though it's a destination rather than a continuous journey.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how do I get to me? Like, where is me? And how do I get there rather than me is changing and one day I'm going to love nipple play and one day I'm going to love something else.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's forever. We're just not set, are we? And we so change as we get older, and our like wants and needs, and what we're interested in doing with our time and people, and it is just constantly changing, I think.
Sorry to do a bait and switch here, but this reminds me of something that we talked about earlier when you said in recognizing yourself as non-binary, you felt some regret, probably not the word you used, but you felt sad that you hadn't figured it out earlier.
Yeah. Well, I think it's true, but I think I also didn't have the words for it back then, you know? So I think there is this thing of like many trans people having like a second adolescence or something because they weren't able to have that
Yeah.
at the time, or and that, so there is a bit of a grief for that. And then you look around and there's maybe younger trans people where you think, oh wow, the terminology is here for if you were like 17 or something like that. I wish that I'd grown up with that. But then at the same time, I'm really glad that I can remember just having a really, really shit phone and not having the internet all the time. So there's always things that you can, you know, I know that's not about like trans stuff, but there's always things that you can be like, oh, I wish that, but then this. Like, there's so many things now where I'm like, oh, I'm glad I had a period of time that was not on my phone all the time, you know?
Well, and there's something like just picking up on that. There is something interesting about the way that young people have so many specific descriptions for different things. They have access to all of this information about different sexualities, different gender identities. And I see a lot of younger people being like, okay, I've read all of these and this is the one that seems to be me, so I'm going to be this now. And I think there is a value in not having information sometimes and just like sitting with things and not knowing for a while before like jumping to a conclusion that might not fit within 6 months.
Well, I guess everything is very labeled now, you know? But also, have you ever listened to Esther Perel?
No.
She's like a relationship sex therapist, coach, counselor person. And she did a talk about technologies and how we use them. But it's kind of interesting that coming from like a relationship counselor. And she kind of says that like what we're kind of missing right now is the fear of chance, of opportunity, of like these chance encounters. And I really do believe that it's like there's an app for who to date, there's an app for how we get places, that there's always these apps for everything. People aren't just going to walk maybe into a bar and see somebody tonight like that. They're going to use an app for it or whatever. But there is something which is like our lives are so prescribed to apps and us want indefinite answers now. And that takes away of like just these chance opportunities happening.
Yeah.
you know?
Because if you could pick off a list that you want someone who is 5'7" and has brown hair and green eyes, then you're going to just be given those options. But if you went to a bar, you might get someone who's 5'6".
Yeah, and you might meet up with that 5'7" person, or I can't remember what it was, with green eyes. You might up with them and be like, they are so fucking boring. Do you know what I mean? But you might have met up with the 5'6" person and been like, not exactly what I thought, but do you know what? I'm having a real laugh with them.
Yeah.
Everything is so specific that it's kind of like, I think we really need to embrace room for chance and for like doing things spur of the moment and not let the technology and everything like that dictate that for us.
So my next boyfriend shouldn't be an AI. Well, so how do we create more of those chance encounters?
As in meeting people.
Yeah, but I think it goes beyond meeting people, right? And we're probably not at this point at the moment, but like in a few years, when you book a holiday, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to Lisbon and these are my interests, and it's going to come up with an itinerary for you, and then you're going to go on holiday and you're going to follow this
Oh,
itinerary.
wow.
Don't you think? I think that's kind of inevitable, right?
When you said that, I was like, oh, I could do that chat GTP for my holiday that's coming up, actually. That sounds like a really good idea. Yeah, I think we're going to have to be really conscious about it.
But how do we remain conscious of it? That's the thing, because we can just sleepwalk into these things, right?
It's so true.
You know, ChatGPT is going to suggest we all go to the same places when we're on holiday, and we all like have the same magical day in Paris or whatever. And then we're not going to have those like, oh, I might just go down this alleyway and see what's down here.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, there's this amazing patisserie. I don't know, what's in Paris?
I have heard there are a lot of patisseries, actually.
Maybe it's not a bad thing, but maybe it is.
It's a bit of both, isn't it? It's like, give me the list, but then I might just walk down the alleyway anyway, you know?
But if you grew up in a world where you're so used to being reliant on technology, will you ever do that?
Yeah, I don't know. Let's ask ChatGTP right now.
Okay, so yeah, let's not talk about ChatGPT and our doomed future with AI. Let's talk about the DIsco Opposite Tesco. How long did it run for?
Not very long. I'm making out like it was 7 years. It was 6 months. That's all we had
What,
it as.
6 months, and it was a monthly night for 6 months?
Yeah, we did manage to do it monthly. Maybe it was slightly longer, but I'm pretty much sure it was like 6 month burnout. That's all we had in us.
But so after this first night, was the plan like, yeah, this is going to be how we rule Manchester? We're going to have this club night and it's going to grow and it's going to be amazing? Or were you just like, yeah, let's see what happens?
Let's see what happens, I think, more than anything else, like I was saying, we were DJing off DVD players, so it really did feel like anything could go wrong at any point. So it was really like, let's just take it month by month type of thing. World domination was not, really in its mix.
And so how did you decide to end it? Was it with a whimper or a bang?
I feel like we might have even ended it after some time. Maybe we did one more, but I remember the Manchester Pride one when everybody was there. Maybe we had one more after that and it was a whimper then, and then we capped it. But I do feel like the big bang was when everybody was there that time. And they must have been, maybe over 100 people.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So then thinking about DIsco Opposite Tesco, which was actually horizontal from Tesco, what did it teach you about yourself?
I think it taught me that you can make anything out of nothing, and that people will come to things. If you get the right thing going on, people will come to things. I mean, not many, or it could be hammered, but it will have some kind of appeal, and that you can do it, and you can do it really on the cheap. And I think it just showed me that I can do something off my own back. I didn't have to just go to other people's things, that I could do it and force a girlfriend to be on the DJ decks when she didn't really want to be. I had that within me. So I think it was a confidence thing, maybe for me, I think that was important.
And when you think back on that person, what's the overriding feeling?
I'm proud of them for doing it, and getting to carry on, to getting there. Not that I'm at a destination now, but getting there even more, Makes me think how far I've come when you actually go back. It's like, oh gosh, wow, that was a while ago, And yeah, it's good to keep chipping away at things, really.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. I think change doesn't happen overnight. You have to keep going.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any advice that you would give them if you had the opportunity to talk to them now? And is it really weird talking about yourself in the third person like this? Sorry.
I'd say be more confident. Like, embrace yourself more. It's going to be okay. I think I realised that I just was probably going really through it at that age, or like, I think, just figuring out who I was even more, and that being insecure and stuff. And I mean, not everybody is actually, but quite a common thing at that age maybe. But to try and find the belief in yourself a bit more, because it had served me,
That's good advice for today as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when I've heard other people answer a similar question, people always usually say that. I think just in general, we maybe don't have that much beliefs in ourselves, and it does take time. But I guess that's the thing, that we're always just learning, aren't we? And we're always figuring it out.
Learning and then forgetting.
Yeah. Learning, unlearning, forgetting.
That's it for another week. Thank you again for taking the time to listen. Before I set you off out into the world, a few things to say. First of all, go and find out more about Ames by following them on Instagram at Ames_Pennington_, or check out their website, amespennington.com. And if you want to find out a little bit more about me and see clips from episodes, like actually see what my guests look like rather than just hearing them, then follow me on TikTok or on Instagram at Lost Spaces Pod. Another week over. I will see you next Wednesday. Bye.